What is your take on the rise of far-right organizations? We see it happening all over Europe right now, in Latin America, South America, and of course, how does that play into the rise of these organizations in Canada and during this election?
Well, we think, that the 2008 economic meltdown in the United States really shook the capitalist system. And one of the responses to that is the rise of very far-right parties. There was a poll taken last winter in Canada asking people how they're doing at the end of the month, how's your life? And more than 50% of those who were polled responded by saying that they were $200 away from disaster at the end of every month. So 50% is a very high number. And so the next obvious question is, well, how many are $300 away from disaster? So a lot of people are living right on the edge. They're feeling that they're not well served, that they could lose their jobs anytime, that they could lose their homes anytime, that they have no security. And some of them are saying, well, capitalism isn't working for me, and I want to look and see what else there is. So, they pay these big right-wing corporate think tanks in order to solve these problems for them. When people start to worry about capitalism, well, what are we going to do? And I think, this poll must have scared the pants off, people who make a lot of money out of the capitalist system and out of the current misery that so many people are facing. And their solution is, well, if capitalism isn't working for you, well, try a little fascism. And as we can see in Europe, people who maybe don't belong to trade unions, have no experience with any kind of, social justice movements, can be taken in by that kind of stuff. And the stuff that they're selling is the stuff that Bernier and the Anti-People's Party are selling. And that is, you're having a rough time, you can't pay your bills, your life isn't good. It's that union. That guy who's making $5 an hour more than you are. It's those immigrants who are stealing your jobs. It's women who don't know their place. It's indigenous people who, it's a very long list. It's Muslims, etc. So they are pushing these right-wing explanations, these semi-fascist explanations. And if you think I'm overdoing it here in describing these, let's look at Maxime Bernier's billboard campaign where they said, mass immigration must stop. But there's no mass immigration in this country. It's a lie. But fake news, as they say, is their stock in trade. So we can see that there is this push to drive politics to the right, to the Conservative Party, which is the party that has the links. Mr. Bernier came out of the Conservative Party, and if you look at their platforms, they're not very different. Both of them have links to the Soldiers of Odin, for example, to Faith Goldie, a white supremacist who's been banned from Facebook, to Charles McVety, and to these racist and fascist movements, which are responsible for, endangering people. They're not only talk machines; they're actually involved in acts, in hate acts, and endangering people. So this is a very dangerous development. The difference between the Liberals and Tories is that the Liberals don't have these connections that the Tories do. But the Liberals and the Tories are both big business parties. And our message is that there's no solution with big business parties, and that the solutions, in quotes, being offered on the right are extremely dangerous to working people, to youth, to Indigenous people, to women, and that the real solutions are on the left. We need to build up the left forces in the next parliament. We'd like to see the next parliament with 30 communists in it, and a good, a good large progressive bloc of left-thinking people. We think the best outcome in this dangerous situation would be to deny both the Liberals and the Conservatives the majority government, and to completely shut out Bernier and that lot. And with a large progressive bloc, we could prevent either minority government from being able to carry out the worst parts of their agenda. And we think it would be possible also to use that leverage, working with the trade union movement and the people's movements, to force adoption of some of the most important parts of the people's agenda that we are advocating: cutting the arms budget, raising the minimum wage, acting on construction of social housing, things that are very important to people, plant closure legislation, and so forth. So there's a lot to lose in this election, but there's also a fair bit to gain. Some people have asked us, well, who would be in this progressive bloc? Are you endorsing, the NDP or the Greens? No, we're not. We're not endorsing them. But we know that there are people who are likely to be elected from those parties that we could work with on specific issues. On the issue of proportional representation, for example, we've worked with the Greens before. Other issues, healthcare, housing. We're not. I think the NDP is advocating 500,000 units of social housing should be built. Okay, let's work on 750,000. These are urgent questions facing people. We know that we're not the only ones who are concerned. We think our party has the best platform in terms of addressing the urgent problems facing people. We think it's better than any of the other parties by quite a lot. But we know that there's support for this kind of a platform, and that we could certainly generate support from other sectors as well outside of Parliament. And that's what it's actually going to take. The problems that we're facing now as a society are still going to be there on October 22nd. Shocking, I know, but true. And it's also the case that, as in the struggle for Medicare, for example, or any of the other really important things that we have won in Canada, it was never just legislated by a good-hearted government. It was always fought for by people in struggle in the streets, people fighting with petitions and protests, like the big climate strike yesterday. That's the kind of action that needs to be built up in this country, working with progressive people in Parliament and communists in the first place, that can achieve the kind of changes we need today. So I invite your listeners to vote communist this time.